Yeah, we're back.
That was creepy.
I always like that. What, my
It's been forever.
Yeah. I always feel like with that transition, we just get to let our hair down a little bit. You know, everyone's guard is down. You guys don't know what the questions are.
Nope.
You know, so there's a sort of sense of, I don't know, je ne sais quoi, right?
It's like talking in class when the teacher leaves the room. Or something.
Yes. That's a perfect example. Wow.
That's when I would steal things from her desk.
All right, so the teacher has left the room, and we've got some questions to answer. Let us first start with question number 1, given to us via the magic of Twitter.
I can't read any of these.
No, well, there's no question. Yeah, there it is. All right, here we go. What do you think of UFC champs versus Bellator champs? This actually came up on my show.
I don't even know what they're asking.
Okay, well, so sometimes I like to take some liberties with the questions.
What do you think about apples? You think they're delicious? I mean,
full of fiber.
Here's the thing. So I like to take the question and then sort of like package it into a neater question.
All right.
When Strikeforce was at its peak, I felt like you could go down the line. You could say, okay, Strikeforce champ versus UFC champ. You know, at the time, I think we had like Jacare as middleweight champ, and you had Dan Henderson. And you could actually say that, yeah, the divisions were weak overall, like they were thin, but at the very top, they could compete with the UFC champion. Yep. And so the question is, right now in Bellator, what do we have? We have Darion Caldwell at
Primus.
135. We've got Pitbull. Brent Primus at 155. We've got Lima at 170. We've got Carvalho at 185.
That one's a little weak there.
Well, Musasi might change things.
Right.
And then at light heavyweight, who do we have at light heavyweight? Now I'm drawing a blank.
It was Bader.
Of course, Bader. He just beat Phil Davis. Yep. Have we reached the point where the Bellator champs can compete?
You mentioned heavyweight. That thing just dissipated.
That thing doesn't exist. Or not quite yet. What do you think, Luke?
I've always felt that the Bellator guys are pretty competitive. Even not just the one, you can get 1 and 2 that are pretty competitive.
You think so?
You could go Chandler and Primus. You could go Pat Curran looked good in his last win. Obviously, Strauss just lost, but Emmanuel Sanchez is up there. So you could do it at featherweight. You could do it at, obviously, Rory and Lima. You could do it at 135, Darren Cole. Well, not Joe Time and Glow, but certainly Eduardo Dantas, even though he just lost, is very competitive.
Where are they most competitive?
Probably 170. I think Lima doing what he did to Larkin and then picking up Rory.
Lima against Woodley?
Is big. 145 is pretty stacked all the way down, to be honest. It's a good division. And 155 is okay, not great. But, of course, you got Aaron Pico, 145 as well. So, like, they've got a few guys that are pretty interesting, yeah.
I think at the top is where they get a little thin.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like a Bellator card. Sure. The first 4 to 5 fights, depending on what it is, if it's tempo or not, those are awesome. Everything else is just regional nubbery. So,
well, if anything's told, if we're told anything by some of the UFC guys who've defected over to Bellator, there's not a big advantage just because you're a UFC fighter. A lot of them have been losing, and some of those guys had been at the top in UFC. So it's stupid to think that just because he's fighting, like Lima's fighting in the Bellator banner, they couldn't compete with Woodley. I mean, in my mind, that's probably a pretty competitive fight. You know what I mean? And I think you could probably go down and make the case for a few of those. You know what I mean? But
just ask Ben Henderson, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Ben Askren.
Yeah,
but yeah. Ben Henderson has learned that.
Yeah, and I mean, Ben Askren would have been another one because at the time he was there, and who knows, he still might have been there at the top after all this time. But, you know, those scenarios are always pretty fun. But it's funny because I remember thinking about that when Strikeforce had really top guys at the top, and I remember thinking like you could actually make a case for half of the Strikeforce guys winning. Like you'd think, like, I bet you anything, if you put them together, Strikeforce guys would come out on top as a whole.
They had Melendez at 155, they had Nick Diaz at 170.
But I'm not sure you could do that right now with Bellator. Right. But I think some of those fights would be pretty good.
Yeah, I would say that if you were laying betting odds, I wouldn't make any of the Bellator champions a favorite over any UFC champion, but I think that they might win some of them. If you had a card of all those champion versus champion all the way down the line, I don't think the UFC guys would win all of them. I don't know who would end up losing, but I think I could see somebody. I think some of those fights are competitive enough that somebody's going to come out there and surprise us.
I want to see Ryan Bader versus Daniel Cormier, the fight that we never.
There you go.
I just want to say this debate is slowly getting sadder. Because the original debate was like UFC versus Pride. Ooh.
Yeah,
I know.
And then it took a step down. It was like UFC versus Strikeforce. And I was like, UFC versus Bellator, really? I mean, this is what we've come to.
Should we do PFL versus Bellator?
I was going to say, you're going to be really sad if we go that direction.
All right, let's move along to our next question. What else we got? Will any of Conor's fans ever spell his first name correctly?
Drives me crazy.
I actually
the two N's?
Yes, the two N's.
Anyone who does that should just be banned from Twitter.
So many people do that.
Which name is spelled more wrong?
Well,
Wrong.
Ronda,
Ronda.
Ronda.
with an H. Ronda with an H
Yeah.
for sure.
No,
It's unbelievable.
I think Conor more.
You
No?
think so?
More recently,
Well,
Maybe
for
because
sure.
he's brought up.
I mean, Ronda with an H is, I believe, isn't that the more common spelling of that name?
Is 2N Connor more like? Why do people always default? Like even in
I don't
articles
know.
you see it.
I'm not
They
sure.
seem to default
The Connor
towards that
one
one,
seems
right?
simple. It seems simple to me. So when I see people screw that up, which is all the time, I'm like, come on, it's not that hard.
Oh, the other one is
like the Johnny Hendricks one, you understand. Johnny has one N in his name. You're like, dude, that's just weird. But you do memorize, like, okay, he spells his name funny. But you understand if somebody's going to misspell that one. But for the Connor one, I'm always like, dude, Connor looks normal with one N.
Yeah.
To me, in my mind.
Also,
That's because you're a writer.
Way more.
also it's like McGregor. Like it's
Oh,
something,
yeah, I
it's like
see
it's
that
something
too.
you buy
MAC.
at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Let me get the McGregor and then whatever. It's like
Well, it's like McDonald's.
you're just adding letters to this now all of a
If
sudden.
you're that big of a fan, learn not to spell the guy's name correctly, right?
Just delete your Twitter.
Just-
Just please delete.
I will
Well,
say,
there's
you know,
no McGregor fans do that. Aren't they always the fans of the other guy?
I get it a lot. I don't look at their their tweeting history,
You know,
but
I did
get
see
it.
it. I did see it, and I couldn't run up to the Mayweather fight. I mean, I don't know where you saw it, what you were reading, what you were consuming, because it was a crazy week. But I got the chance to like dig around another.
Oh, you see it in the press?
I saw it in the press.
Yes.
everywhere.
same here.
I was
That's
like,
what shocked me.
I was like, because that's not even a copy editor's fault. Because to your point,
Yeah.
you can spell Connor with two N's. It's just that the writer
know.
didn't know, and the copy editor didn't
know.
know.
Well, it is the copy editor's fault. The copy editor's supposed to catch that
Okay,
stuff.
but you know what I mean.
But there
Like,
are no copy editors in a lot of
What are
lot
the
of ways.
like the other ones? Like Carlos Conduit was a big one for a long time. Like the
That was more
Conduit.
Nick Diaz's fault.
But people still spell it that way.
Frank
Conduit.
Mir.
There's another one. I can't think of what it is off the top of my head, but there's another one
Connor
that
and
people.
Ronda are the two main ones.
Yeah, because they're the
Ironically,
most
the two biggest
visible.
stars. But everyone I see Ronda with an H all the time.
I know. I wish I
Holly
was.
Holmes.
I wish I was.
Yes, Holly Holmes is a great.
Holly Holmes is a good one, yeah.
George St. Pierre, no S in George. You see
Yeah.
that? But maybe that's because it's a French.
Right.
So it turns out that you're not really famous until people totally butcher your name.
This has to be like the dorkiest journalism.
No, I
Discussion
seriously,
the-
We can go farther.
it's like, there's a guy who spells Connor with two N's. We're talking about Conor McGregor. I want to push that person into traffic. Please go away forever.
Oh, boy. All right. So to answer the question, I don't know when.
No, never.
They'll figure it
Never.
out, but maybe
It's
one
like
day.
asking when you're going to be ready.
NEVIR, never.
Okay, here we go. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt? So I'm going to modify this question
Yeah,
because I think we're all very happy doing what we're doing.
sure.
But if you weren't an MMA journalist, if you weren't someone who covered sports for a living, what do you think you would be doing, Jeff?
Oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of this at all. I would want to be an inventor. I'd want to
Inventor.
I want to
Well,
create.
I think that's something my son would say.
I want to be a bus driver.
No, an
I
inventor.
want to be a
is actually
fireman.
something-
No,
What do you mean by an inventor? Is that actually a job? Like you just invent
Yes,
things?
it's, you know, my father-in-law was an inventor, and I was always, and I at one point he
What did he
wanted to,
invent?
he invented like a lot of, not like famous things, but he invented like some really important scales you would keep in hospitals for weighing people, like burn victims, and like learn so they could, it was really like.
But did he
esoteric
focus on
stuff.
that, or when he was done inventing that, did he go to something completely
He
different?
would start inventing all different
Wow.
things. And then he was teaching
Was he
at
self-employed?
He ended up teaching at RPI Inventor Studio. So he created, and he's actually, yes, and he ended up inspiring some students who created like some incredible inventions. And so I used to go to his class because at one point he wanted to write a book about inventors. So I went to his class for like half a semester and was really inspired by watching it and thinking, because when you do that, it's, as a writer, one of the things you think about is you're being creative. And inventing is about being creative. It's about losing the kind of preconceived notion of, inventing is not about saying, well, I want to do this. It's more about like, where's the problem? There's a problem, I got to get there somehow. And I think it's a very creative way of thinking. And I had never thought of wanting, it's not something I grew up wanting to do, but the more I started spending time in those classes around those people, I thought, God, what a badass thing to do is to create things that could maybe solve major problems in the world. It'd be really cool.
Wow, what a response.
NBA basketball player.
Okay.
Probably do that first. If we're keeping it realistic.
Sure, why not?
I mean, I don't know. You said MMA journalist, and I guess that's technically what it is. But I have to probably be writing books. I'd be writing books. I'd be writing. That's what I would want to be doing more so. Like kind of keeping it more in that sector. But also maybe
Fiction
like
or nonfiction?
both.
Okay.
Honestly.
The same book?
Just it's like just
What kind of genre are we talking? Like mysteries,
I don't know.
Erotica.
Man. I mean,
love?
I don't know. I like, but probably more so in nonfiction. But I do like the short story idea and like putting together collections of short stories, things like that.
Have you ever written a book?
Not like I did one for St. Martin's Press, which was more of a tourist guide. It was off the beaten path things. It was a co-authored book with some other people from LA Weekly. So that's the only thing I've done in that direction. But I'd probably be doing something like that, and then maybe being a professor of writing if you were going to down the line to talk about that sort of thing.
Well, very simple to answer this one. What are my 3 favorite things? Number 1, MMA, so we can't talk about it. 2, shoplifting.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd just be a professional shoplifter. And 3, pornography.
See, I didn't know we could say that.
Stealing dirty magazines.
I would be into pornography in some kind of fashion.
As an actor?
I don't know, entrepreneur.
Okay.
Keep my options open. You never know. Maybe slide in occasionally.
Call up Icy Mike.
Mike, I got some opportunities.
I'm willing to change mine if he'll give me a job.
The career I was on before MMA was basically, I'd probably be working in D.C. in some kind of public policy, either for the government or some policy shop in the private sector.
For those that don't know, what were you doing before?
I did speech writing for people who would pay me to write speeches. So this was either...
How high did you go?
Pretty high.
can you
Grover,
not say?
Cleveland.
Yeah, no, I can't say.
Oh, you can't say?
No, pretty high.
How come you can't say?
Some of this stuff is confidential.
Oh, really?
But I worked for some advocacy groups. I'd written some stuff for the AARP. I've written some stuff for private clients. I've written a lot. And I've worked for some scumbags too. In fact, mostly scumbags.
Did you ever write for the president?
No,
Okay, not
Jesus
that high.
Christ, not that.
I don't know. I mean, you're being very secretive.
Certain guys who were some candidates.
Oh, wow.
But
So people we would know.
oh yeah,
Oh, wow.
but I wasn't very good at it, so I kind of got out of it. There you go.
Okay.
I mean, if you hate somebody so much, you can't do the job well.
Sure,
I
that's
can't.
true.
So there you go.
I probably would still be in TV production. That's what I started.
No pornography.
No. Well, there is production elements, but no, never been my thing. In fact,
Reproduction.
the website that I left TV production to pursue MMA journalism, I launched a website. I've told the story a million times, but its 10-year anniversary is next Thursday,
Wow.
October 19th,
That
2007.
celebration.
JerryPark.com.
We were at
Still
Jerry
up.
Park shirts.
That would be nice. Kurt Angle interview. That was my first interview on October 19th, 2007. All right, I like that question. Those are fun. What else we got? Gents, where would the UFC be if Aldo had beaten Conor McGregor very decisively at UFC 194? 4 billion sales. So I guess,
Man.
pontificating whether they would even be
The
sold.
old sliding doors.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What do you think? Are they sold? And if they're sold,
Why do you keep coming to me first?
I'm just looking.
It's crazy.
I'm trying to
Well,
switch things up.
Reading your
Okay,
body
well,
language.
let's say this. I mean, Conor was beaten decisively by Nate Diaz, and what happened? He found a way back. He is, he has proven that he can get his ass kicked and turn around and end up, in an advantageous position. So if that had happened, I don't know how he would have manufactured the rematch, but I guess I'll say that I don't know whether all the UFC would have sold for what it sold, but I think that, let's say if we're speaking about is the question where's McGregor or where would the UFC
where's
be?
the UFC? Yeah.
Well, I mean, he would still be a big star unless it was like so embarrassing, and it would all be about what he did next.
Yeah, but Chuck,
Man.
if he got knocked out in 13 seconds, there's no way the company sells for that.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree with you 100%. I mean, when you really think about that,
If you
then you
just
start to go.
reverse
You
the
have to go
result.
down the line then and see how that affects each one of his next moves, and that's where it was all in the subsequent movement that basically helped bring that price up. You know what I mean? And I feel like that'd have been fairly. It wouldn't have been catastrophic. Probably what would have happened was he would have got a rematch, but you don't know then.
I think he would have gotten a rematch
Probably.
as challenger if he was knocked out in 13 seconds.
Would have been hard.
It would have been very hard.
13 seconds?
I'm just saying, reverse the result.
Yeah, but wouldn't he make that his case? Like, hey, he caught me and I didn't get a
Yeah,
chance
but
to
what
get
would
one.
the
Aldo
demand
tried to
have
make
been?
that
He wouldn't
case.
have been the star, right? Everyone
Yeah.
would have just said, you're a fraud.
It's
Everyone
true.
would have said,
And see,
you don't
that's where you're like, you have to think about the whole context, where we were at that moment and how things might have changed. And
Right.
honestly, it's really difficult to know. But I feel very certain in saying I don't think they get a $4 billion price tag, which
too.
is crazy because
Yeah.
you think about that one punch meaning something like that. That's a crazy proposition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still kind of think they probably would have sold for a lot. But
For a lot, but maybe not that much.
maybe not. I mean, here's the truth. They shouldn't have sold for that much anyway. Let's
Yes.
just be real about
I
that.
agree.
But yeah, maybe it would hurt. I don't think substantively would have changed it, but probably would have adjusted down a little bit. Sure.
Yeah. I still can't believe, like, when I see the Knicks, which are just like an institution, of course they suck, but like they're valued by Forbes at like 3.75. And you telling me you'd rather own the UFC than the Knicks? There's no way, right?
Wow, that's quite an admission.
No, I'd much rather own the Knicks than the UFC. No?
Really?
Heck yeah.
Dude, the Knicks are a sorry team.
But people in Kazakhstan are wearing Knicks hat. You know what I mean? Like, that's a brand. That's something you can sell with a history. Like, no one's walking. I think we've learned by now that no one's walking around wearing UFC gear. Like, you're selling pay-per-views, you're selling tickets, you're not selling merchandise and all this other stuff. I mean, you guys disagree with that? You'd rather own the UFC than an NBA team? Pick a team. The
Nuggets.
lowly Nuggets.
Yeah. They're only valued at $100 million, though. So it's
The nuggets of lint in my pocket are worth more than the Nuggets.
You'd rather own the UFC than the Washington Wizards.
Oh, see, now you
Yeah, but the Wizards are a good team.
No, you get my point.
I know.
I'd rather
If someone
own the
said-
Sacramento Kings.
If someone said Real Madrid, I would say yes, for sure. Wizards,
Any sports franchise.
I don't know about that.
I don't
Listen,
know about anyone.
Are you crazy?
I mean, certainly the Knicks.
haven't we
yes,
learned
'cause
this
it's a big
year?
market.
What are they?
We're just talking about what we would want. I mean, you're talking about, like, would you rather win $5 billion in the lottery or
No, but
5.5
to say
billion?
that they're on par value-wise, it's not even close. We learned this year
that's
that
probably
a
fair.
bad
That's
year
probably
for the UFC, and then, like, God forbid something bad happens, some kind of injury, that number goes way down. The NBA is in it. Plus the TV deal.
And the NBA's on the rise, but those chickens are coming home to roost also eventually on these organizations.
It'd
that
be
are
a lot
getting
more
salary
fun.
money from TV.
A lot more fun to own an NBA team, I think.
Yeah,
Would
I
it?
mean,
I think so.
you don't have to deal with main events falling through and things like that. You just put out the 12 guys and say, let's go.
You got to worry
Build your
about
best 12.
you got to worry about Markeith Morris and his brother.
You're going to have knuckleheads, but you got way more. I mean, you're dealing with 500 fighters as opposed to 15. So
Yeah, that's true. It's a little less.
I think that came up when the Fertitta's third cousin bought the Rockets, and he bought it for less than the UFC. And I said that I'd
Still
much
a
rather
lot.
own the Rockets,
What's his
especially Tillman Fertitta.
I love the names.
Tillman, yeah. But like, especially the Rockets that are actually very popular in China because of Yao Ming.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be in that business.
Yeah, that's probably true. And also, Houston's going to
brand.
have a decent team this year. So
All right, let's move along. What else we got? What has been everyone's favorite event to cover? What's the nicest thing a fighter has done for you? So you can pick one or the other here in the interest of time. Favorite event to cover or nicest thing a fighter has done for you?
favorite event to cover. Where I just had like a blast or something.
Well, memorable. You really enjoyed the experience.
Sure. The first time I ever had to fill in for you, that was super hard and awful, but it was fun at the same time.
UFC 145.
Yeah, when
My son was born.
Rashad fought John Jones
JBJ.
in Atlanta, and it was me and Mike Chiappetta, and it was like a real crazy weekend for me. It was a lot of fun. And the nicest thing a fighter has ever done, I guess, some of the comments that Max Holloway has made, and Demetrius too, about some of my podcasts. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's great.
I would say probably Jason Thacker, right? I mean, he was not giving any interviews, and finally we thought him out and was able to do that piece.
That was
I would
great.
probably say that's the nicest thing that a fighter's ever done for me. But as far as the event, man, that is tough because some of the smaller ones end up being so fun, like and memorable in these weird ways. But I still think that probably that Toronto one, like the original one with GSP at the, selling out the Rogers Center and all that, there was something cool about that because it felt like the sport was getting, like you're hitting this big moment in time where it's like, wow, there's a 55,000 seat, we're gonna blow up the gate, all this stuff. It just seemed so big at the moment, and like we were gonna, like it was gonna become a norm at the time. It felt like this would be our new norm. Of course, it hasn't really panned out that way, but that was definitely a big one for me.
Wow. I for some reason I think that the John Jones winning the title in New Jersey was my favorite event. Partly because when I arrived at the arena, all of a sudden I heard all the stuff that had happened earlier in that day about him going out to Patterson and grabbing the mugger. And so I remember, like, because usually you show up at an event, at least for me, because I'm typically writing about the main event and maybe the co-main. I've got it sort of easy early on. I could go to the press room, talk to my friends, have some food, go watch some fights, and then I started working. Well, I immediately had to start
tough life.
Yeah, I immediately had to like hop into it, and it was kind of but it was also later on that night seeing this guy who was kind of the future of the sport coming out there and winning. So that was it. And actually, Jones also factors into the coolest thing that after he beat Vitor in Toronto and hurt his arm. I ran into him the next day at the airport. Actually, I saw him lying on some chairs sleeping, and I was getting on my plane, and I happened to hear the boarding announcement for his plane, and I saw he was still sleeping, and I went over. It was actually, in a way, it was the nicest thing I've ever done for a fighter. I went over and like shook him, which I was not sure I should do because you shake a guy, you know, he might reach up and hit me. But you know, he thanked me for waking him up so he didn't miss his flight, and I said, well, you know, you have like 2 minutes. Can I get an interview? And he told me all about, because he was not wearing like a sling and he had hurt his arm, so we had a nice little interview about, you know, about what was going on with his arm, why he didn't go to the hospital, all this stuff. And then, you know, I ended up writing a story on the plane. And I remember I was ready for SI at the time, and ESPN's guy was also in the area on the same plane as me and did not see Jones. So I sort of got to write a story while I was in the air. And Jones went. That was the day that Jones was flying to Baltimore to go see his two brothers play for the Ravens and Patriots, and that was the connection there.
Wow. Let me correct it. That one was filling in for you was fun and challenging and interesting. I'll take that back. It was when Demetrius fought Dominic Cruz in D.C. and when Amir Khan fought Lamont Peterson in D.C. Those were just two magical nights. I'm a D.C. homer, you know it, and it just felt real special in the city that day. Those days.
Anytime someone asks me about an event, 112 always comes to mind because it was Abu Dhabi and it was so foreign, and we were essentially the only North American journalists there. And
Mike Straka was out there.
Mike Straka, yes, but he was doing some other stuff, I think, for Fight Magazine and partying with Frankie Edgar. But just being at the press conference, and there was no live stream of it, so I was tweeting Dana's quotes as he was like infuriated. And I remember I had around like 4,500 Twitter followers, and that night I gained 1,000 just because so many people were passing around my tweets. So I always think of that, being in Montreal. Japan, 144 was great. Sydney, 127. But like 112 was just such a weird.
Were you at Pittsburgh a few years ago when, so there was like
Charlie Brenneman?
Yeah, so that was, actually, thinking about it, that was probably one of the more memorable ones in the sense that we had that whole switch. We got Brenneman who went and fought Story. But if you remember, the president was at the hotel, and he leaves and the Furries convention is taking place. And then Chris Birdman Anderson is like hanging out the bar. It was like, that was probably the craziest circus atmosphere I've ever been in. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Birdman is a show in person.
Yeah, he was great.
All right, what else? Nicest thing? Anytime a fighter comes on my show, I just feel, I mean, honestly, especially when they come to you first or something, it's just, you know, it's hard to pick one. But yeah, that really comes to mind. Okay, what else we got? I think we got one more. If the Nationals win tonight,
Did you pick this, you MFer?
I didn't pick anything. Paige picked them all. Do they go on a streak of World Series wins?
F no.
World Series.
Are you kidding? Here's the thing. You know what was amazing yesterday? I was asking my friend.
They have to get by the next series first.
Yeah, I was asking my friends. I was like, are the Wizards, this was last night, I was like, are Wizards, are the Nationals going to choke tonight, or are they going to come roaring back only to choke in Game 5, which you'll recall is now back in D.C.
Cynical.
I am absolutely into.
Why so cynical?
Cynical?
Why not just enjoy the ride?
Fuck the ride.
Why?
Produce. Every year, these effing teams, the Caps are the Nationals on ice, and the Nationals are the Capitals on grass. They overperform. Yay, another President's Trophy for the Capitals. Yeah. Do something. Advance to the next round. Win something. I'm tired. You just do nothing except win games that no one gives a fuck about.
I see a man protecting his heart right now. He's put a steel case around his heart.
And they're gonna lead. They're gonna lead 3-0, and then who's that fat ass Schwarber who plays for the Cubs? He's gonna hit some grand slam in the 9th, and that's gonna be that. And this is how it's gonna go. You watch. And then champagne. Champagne.
Don't get me started on the champagne every round. That's a little too much.
They're wearing ski masks now. I want to just blow it in their face.
I'll go the other direction. I think they're going to win 4 World Series after this series.
Oh, please no. I would faint.
Bryce Harper's going to come to New York, and that's going to be the end of that.
Great. All right, so are we predicting victory tonight or no?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, all right.
I'm predicting unbelievable, incredible, incompetent collapse.
And as I said to you off air, I don't like to root for the demise of teams.
You are such a hater.
Except for with the Nationals.
I get to say that, not you.
I am so happy to see them. Now, I will admit, over time, that feeling has kind of...
Do you hate Bryce Harper?
I don't hate anyone. I hate that logo. Like, when I see someone wearing that logo, I want to say to them, like, do you know my heart was broken because of that logo? Do you know that you took away my childhood team? Do you know you took away my children's team?
Dude, this is some Count of Monte Cristo.
I hate
the revenge
when I see that logo. I like the feeling of disgust that starts to come up.
I should wear it in studio next week.
And so every time they fail and fail and fail and fail again, the Nats, and I'm talking about the GNATS, the Nats, because they're just like this annoying thing that doesn't go away, but you don't want them
Did
around.
Wackenheim give you that joke before the show?
I am not a fan of the Nationals, but I will be rooting heavily for them because if nothing else, if they win, it will be in the demise of the genius Joe Madden. I mean, the insufferable Joe
You
Madden.
actually look like Joe Madden.
The insufferable Joe Madden. And big fan of our show. A shout out to a guy named Mr. Smooth, who was a big hater of Joe Madden. And
I
just
thought
for
Joe
him,
Madden was a fan.
No.
Well, what's wrong with Joe Madden? He's great.
He's a
Donaldson, maybe.
self-proclaimed genius, and it's just be so wonderful to see him fall on his face.
You know what's the problem is Joe Madden tolerates Bill Murray. Bill Murray was hilarious in the 80s, and yeah, I'll give him the Scarlett Johansson Lost in Translation movie.
Tremendous film.
That was amazing. Okay, it was
Groundhog Day was good.
But Bill Murray showing up, especially at Wrigley Field, glad-handing with all the
He's a lifelong
millennials.
fan.
Come on, this moron, this old. You're an old person.
Oh,
Get
I
out of the
love
locker room.
seeing the tweets from the
Murray,
long-suffering
come on.
Nationals
Dude,
fans.
Bill
The team has been
Murray.
around for 10 years, and I see people going like, "Wow, you can't feel emotionally invested in a team that's only been around for 10
I don't
years."
care about allegiance to the team. I care about Bill Murray pretending like he's still funny. He just waltzes into rooms and starts doing his 1-2 shtick.
He's the man. Come on.
It's like Bill Murray alone.
No.
Come on.
Listen, no. Everyone's like, oh, I love Bill Murray. I like Ghostbusters. Okay, Ray.
film.
If someone asks you if you were a god, you say yes. I understand all this.
What
I'm saying
about
is,
Bob? It's a classic.
what about Bob? Groundhog Day. These are all tremendous. Scrooged. I can go on and on. Listen to his shtick now. He has overstayed his
older.
welcome.
He's older.
Someone needs to grab him by his belt loops and his collar and toss him out of the field, please.
Okay, where's the last one? We had one last one here.
No, that was it.
No.
lie.
We had one last one. Where is it? Boom! There it is. I want to give a shout out to our guy Orange Ape.
You know, why
Look
do
at
that one look like the most depraved and
By the way, what band is that?
It looks like, is that Prince? Are you Prince?
I think this is a band because he says some people know today is Thursday.
Oh, yeah, wait.
but
Who
really
did this?
it
Wait.
is-
Who did
Boys
the
Are Back
song
in
The Boys
Town.
Are Back in Town?
Well,
The
yeah,
Boys Are
yeah.
Back in
Thin
Town.
Lizzy, right?
Anyone know? Joe, do you know?
Thin
No.
Lizzy?
No.
I listen to
young.
music that requires testicles, so I wouldn't know what that is.
I mean, this is a great piece of
But the Photoshop's
It actually
tremendous.
looks
you
real.
actually look very natural with that.
Who's the best? Who's the best Photoshop here? I love the chest hair.
Jeff or you?
you?
Well, I'm the
actually
only
think
person in this
Chuck's
group
face-
with hair, so
like-
But isn't Chuck wearing Jeff's shirt? Like, isn't that like a Hawaiian shirt? No.
Sort of. It's just like Chuck looks like he's trying to find the best cleavage in the ring.
I think I found it with you.
Yeah, I guess that chest hair's got you sized.
It's just fantastic. It is a fantastic piece of
He does- he
Photoshop.
does-
this is a
those-
Photoshop right here.
Yeah.
He does those every week.
Every week.
You gotta
just
follow.
like that. Orange Ape. Much respect. I loved it. That was one of my favorites. And he's done some good
job.
ones in the past, but that was a great one.
Well, we were Metallica once, I believe.
Yeah.
Metallica was pretty awesome.
The Big Lebowski one was the best.
The Big
That's the
Lebowski.
big
was
one.
my
Yes,
favorite.
I agree.
But that separated us. It was only us three, and
that's
then a
right.
separate one. You were Jesus,
Oh.
and we were I was the dude, which
He's
of course
Jewish.
I am the dude.
Right. Okay, we got to go.
I gotta go.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for sticking around for After the MMA Beat. It will be up on YouTube a little later on in the day. Thank you for watching the show. A relatively quiet weekend in MMA coming up. There's some regional action. There's a little LFA, a little Cage Warriors. I think Bigfoot Silva is fighting Rico Verhoeven in Glory, which should not be a disaster. So stay tuned for all of that. And of course, we're back next week for your usual favorite programming. So we'll see you then. For now, we shall say goodbye. For Luke, Chuck, Jeff, I am Ariel. Again, thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the weekend.